Hi, my name is Michael Sharkey, and I am your podcast coach. In business, we all struggle reaching new customers, hiring top-tier talent, even meeting new colleagues. A podcast can help you do all of that and help build loyalty to your brand. So, I've taken 25 years of broadcast experience along with working with podcast hosts around the world and created a professional podcast program. A simplified way for you to use a podcast to tell the story of your business or share your expertise. Look, you know your business better than anyone. It's time to let a podcast tell your story. But before you can do any of that, you've got to build a studio. As a podcast coach, I've had the amazing opportunity to work with all kinds of hosts and all kinds of businesses, from artists and chefs to accountants and software engineers. And in our conversations, the very first question that always comes up is, how do I build a studio? Today, I'm going to spend the next 5 minutes showing you not just how to build a studio, but how to build a recording studio, quality studio for your home. This is a studio that I've consulted with broadcast engineers about so that you create the best sound possible when the time comes to record your podcast. Today, I'm also going to show you some different editing software, what you record into, and I'm going to show you how your podcast is going to show up on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever people listen to their favorite podcasts. And one final note before I get into this is that over the course of the next few minutes, I will be mentioning some brand names. And I just want to tell you that I am not endorsed by any of these brands. They are simply the brands that I've researched and that I recommend to every host that I work with. Let's start off with the crown jewel of every studio, the microphone. When it comes to purchasing a microphone, there's a couple of things to consider. First of all, it's quality, which I'll get into in just a second. But second of all is how you feel when you talk into a microphone. Remember, you're going to be telling the story of your business, your expertise, and you want this to be a comfortable environment for you. That is totally a personal preference. But as far as quality goes with microphones, I recommend the Heil PR40. This is about a $350 microphone, so it's on the higher price range, but you just can't beat it for quality. The richness, the sound, the texture. You want your podcast to sound as good as some of the biggest names out there. This microphone delivers. And not only does it deliver in your podcast studio, this is a microphone that I've used in radio studios for many, many, many years. But at $350, maybe that's a little bit out of your price range. So I also recommend this microphone, which is $35. This is the Shure SM48. This microphone is good whether you have this microphone or not, because this is a workhorse microphone that you can take to do interviews everywhere. Plenty of people that I've worked with use this microphone as their normal microphone. The step up from this is the Shure SM58. That microphone is great as well. Just a little bit higher end quality. Price point sits around $95 with that. The final thing I'll tell you about microphones is I don't recommend USB microphones. That said, there's probably a couple out there that are good, but I prefer using professional microphones into a USB interface, which I'm going to talk about next. The next piece of equipment that we're going to talk about is the USB interface. This is what your microphone plugs into. And then the USB interface goes into the USB port into your computer. The reason why I recommend using a USB interface is that it allows you to have control of your levels, your gain, but it gives you that little bit of processing. Like I said a little while ago, you want people that when they listen to your podcast, it sounds as good as Joe Rogan or Adam Carolla. And by using a great microphone and using a great USB interface, you can achieve that. The USB interface brand that I recommend is Focusrite. I've been using these guys for years. Now, I use the Scarlett 18i8. It gives you 4 XLR inputs in the front. But I often recommend the 2i2, and the reason being is that has 2 XLR inputs, and I'll get to those about XLR inputs in just a second, but it also is USB powered. So imagine you want to do an interview, you want to go on location with a laptop, this USB interface, and a couple of these microphones, you can do a recording studio quality interview in a coffee shop. Let's talk about cables and a microphone stand. These are XLR cables. The last thing you want to do is buy a great microphone, a great USB interface, and cheap cables. I've been using Monster cables for many years. They're a little bit higher priced, but I recommend that you get good cables. Don't go on Amazon and buy the cheapest cables out there. It'll make your entire podcast sound like crap. The other thing is start off with a tripod mic boom is what it's called. I use this mic boom in front of you, but for $20, you can get a tripod mic stand. This will allow you to record standing, record sitting. And when you work with me, you'll learn that you want to experiment with how you record your podcast, meaning try different things, stand, sit, walk around, pace. There's a lot of variables that allow you the confidence to sound good. A couple of other features that you're going to want for your studio, you're going to want a good set of headphones. I am super partial to these, the Sony MDR 7506s. I guarantee you, if you watch a documentary set in a studio, you will see somebody wearing these headphones. They're about $85, and they are true studio quality headphones. Now, look, if you got a great pair of Bose headphones, those will work too. You just want to make sure they go into a 1/4-inch jack, and I don't recommend using earbud type style headphones for in the recording environment. Great for listening to podcasts, not for recording studio. And the final piece for a studio definitely falls in the nice to have category is soundproofing. All the equipment that I've shared with you today is designed so that you have that recording studio quality, whether you're doing it in your kitchen, a closet, or as I said before, even a coffee shop. You don't need soundproofing, but I know a lot of people want that extra touch. And I also say with soundproofing, if you don't want to buy official soundproofing, hang a blanket from a wall. Let's talk about editing software. You're going to need some software to record your podcast into. I use and prefer Adobe Audition. Now, at a price tag of $20 a month, maybe you don't want to spend that. It's great. I'm comfortable with it, but not unlike what I said earlier about microphones, you want to find something that you're comfortable with. Audacity, free software, many people use it. And if you're a Mac owner, you probably have GarageBand. Both of those are great for recording your podcast into. Now, how is your podcast going to show up on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio? You're going to need a podcast hosting platform. I use Libsyn, as do Joe Rogan and many other podcasters around the world. As a matter of fact, Libsyn hosts over 55% of all podcasts that are live today. This guarantees you two things. Number one, when somebody goes to listen to your podcast, it will always be there. Big mistake is people try to host their podcast on lesser services or even on their website. And they go to play a podcast and it crashes everything. Libsyn guarantees that not only will your podcast play every single time, but it will show up on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, etc., wherever people listen to their favorite podcast. And let me tell you, it is incredibly important that when you put your podcast out there, it shows up where people listen to podcasts, and Libsyn will help you do that. So there you go, a recording studio quality studio for your home. So now that you've done that, if you need to go through and look at a checklist of any of those, just go to my website, yourpodcastcoach.com, click on Studio Checklist. That will give you an inventory of all the items that we went through today. Also, subscribe to my podcast. Wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, just search Your Podcast Coach. And again, please subscribe and share with a friend. And finally, if you have any questions about anything we went through today, or you're interested in my professional podcast program, email me, michael@yourpodcastcoach.com. That email comes right to my phone. In the meantime, all the best to you and your podcast.